Right. So yeah, don't stare at it. It's all right.
No, it's all right.
So start by telling me your full name,
My full
your
name,
full proper name.
yeah, my full name is Leonard Leslie Pinchbeck.
Okay, and why do I know you as Les then?
Because I was always called Les from the beginning. For what reason, I don't know. So through all my life, I've always been known as Les.
Even though they call you Leonard.
Yeah.
Do you know why you were called Leonard? Was it
No,
after somebody?
no idea. Since as far as I know, we haven't had a previous Leonard in the family at all. So
All right.
it was just a name that was chosen, I think.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about your dad and mum. So what was your dad called, first of all?
My dad's name his full name was John Alfred Pinchbeck, and my mum's name was Ethel Minnie Pinchbeck.
Ethel Minnie.
Pinchbeck, yeah. And
So what did your dad do?
my dad first of all served in the First World War, and then when eventually that was over and he was discharged, as far as I know, only being a young boy at that age, because I was born 1916 and the war finished in 1918, but a few days later, or days later, my dad would get his paying out money from the services and that, and he invested it in buying some property on Anderby Road, Hull, number 173. And at that time it was a butcher shop known as Mr. Atkinson, and my dad had it converted into a fish and chip shop with a saloon to people to go in and sit down and have a free meal.
Right.
And that was in the 1928. So at that age I was 12. And in Hull, on the 6th of October every year,
Yeah.
there was what is known as the Hull Fair.
Yeah.
And of course my dad was open in those days. Fish shops were open from about 8 in the evening, even up to midnight. And people used to come in all hours, fish and chips, round the bread and butter, cup of tea, for 9p in what we were known as old money these days.
Sure.
And of course the people used to give me a shilling to pay for it, and most of them said, "Keep the change, son." So I got threatened tips after most of them. When it came to the weekend, my dad said, "You won't want any pocket money this week, will you?" I says, "Why not? I've done all my chores for you and helped you in what you want to do." He said, "Yeah, but you've had all those tips, you've earned more than I can give you." So I had. And the same with my brother Fred. He used to play football for the St George's Road School, and my dad promised him 6p for every goal that he scored. And one week he had a good week. He came home and he says to his dad, "£0.50, please." And my dad said, "£0.50, why?" He said, "I scored 5 goals." And my dad said, "You're scoring too many." So that was that. And we used to get along very, very well. And my dad, eventually, I'm afraid the business come to, what can I call it, to a conclusion really, because things didn't pay out very well. And with it being on the main road, we had to depend upon people on the main road for custom, whereas people wouldn't walk from the very long side streets. They wouldn't walk all the way to the main road for the fish and chips. So my dad eventually, with him being in the Navy and that, the sea called him back, and he went as a cook on the Hull trawlers to the Iceland fishing grounds, the North Sea and that. But one year they went to the White Sea, and unfortunately they got snowed, icebound, and the ship the trawler owners always used to give the ships 6 weeks after the date that they were due back, and then after that time it was presumed lost. But my dad's ship did eventually come back, because in those days they hadn't the wireless and all the modern equipment that they have today. And because my dad came home unshaven, he looked terrible, and Arlene, my sister, was there, and when my dad walked in, she ran out. She said, "That's not my dad." And so that was that. And then to come to a conclusion for my dad, unfortunately he carried that on all the time, and then unfortunately Britain was dragged into this Second World War, and my dad left home. I went with him because he was due on the trawler leaving St Andrew's Dock, and I was working with a wholesale fish merchant there. And my dad and I had a hug and we parted each other. And then the following day we got the minister from what is known as the Fisherman's Bethel. He came to tell us that my dad's ship, which was called Lucida, had hit one of those magnetic mines that the Germans had sown in the water, and the whole company of the trawler was lost. All men were lost, and eventually there was a special memorial service in the Fisherman's Bethel where all the names of the men were read out. And Joyce should have a little exercise book with some of the photographs of the crew, and also a whole Daily Mail report of the event, which you could read. So that I'm afraid was our sad time when we lost Dad. And it was 54 years of age. That was on the, if I can remember rightly, I think it was the 10th of January 1940, very early in the war.
Very early in the war.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my mum, well, she was just a housewife, and she used to work very, very hard. I mean, there was...
So run through all of your brothers and sisters.
Well, first of all there was Doris May Pinchbeck. Then there was my brother Stanley Alfred Pinchbeck. Then there was Fred Pinchbeck, no second name. And then there was my younger brother Kenneth William Pinchbeck. And the last one to come along was Arlene Minnie Pinchbeck. That was that.
Oh, okay.
And Ken was born in Whitcliffe Grove, Argyle Street in Hull. I presume Fred must have been born in Hull as well. And Arlene was born during the time that my dad was in business, so to say funny, she was born in the fish and chip shop. Yeah. And that was it, and we all used to get on very well together.
Oh.
Yeah.
So what's your earliest recollection as a child? What's the sort of earliest that you can remember?
I first started going to we used to live in Argyle Street at one time, so I had to start my schooling just over Argyle Street Bridge, and there's a street there called Lonsborough Street, and of course I was in the primary section of that school. And then when we moved into the fish and chip shop, I had to go to a school known as TB Holmes. That was a grade up. And then eventually, when the business was sold, and we moved again to number 4 Margaret Street on Beverley Road. And from Margaret Street, you could go down Margaret Street, through Leicester Street, and there's a school at the bottom called Middleton Street, and that was the Middleton Street School where I finally left at 14 years of age. And I have a copy, I can show you that today. I have a copy of the reference that I got from the headmaster of the Middleton Street School. So and then I just started. My mum was one of the very, very early members of the Ealing Pentecostal Church in Hull, which went even back 1928, went even a little bit before that. And Pastor E.C.W. Bolton, with his wife and 2 daughters, they were the ministers of the church at that time. And so I started going to the Ealing Sunday School, and then they used to have a children's meeting every once a week called the Cadets.
So give me some idea of how big the church was, roughly how many people would attend?
Well, I can't say much about my early days because I didn't go to all the meetings with being a child, you see. But it used to be called the Ealing Hall in Mason Street in Hull, and that was packed every Sunday night. I can remember that because I was getting a bit older by then. And then eventually we had chance of this big Methodist church on Hezzer Road, and we didn't want to close Mason Street one because it catered for the people living in that part of Hull. So they carried on, and we opened this city temple in the 1930s, about 1933 I should think, something like that. And we had a very good congregation. The downstairs was full, and also the gallery had quite a number of people in it. We had a great band of young people, known as Crusaders, and we really looked after that very well. And our Sunday school, well, was the biggest Sunday school I've ever known. It went over the 200 mark, because Hezzer Road was such a very heavily populated area of the town with so many children. And every year we had a Sunday school outing to Hornsea, the seaside place in Hull, and we used to have a couple of buses at the church on that Saturday morning to convey all the children down to the Paragon railway station. The special train was put on for us all, with the promise that an adult had to be in every carriage just to keep control of the children. And the doors were locked, and we didn't stop, went straight through to Hornsea. And the boys had a little bit of red ribbon pinned on their jackets or on their shirts. The girls had a piece of red ribbon on the dress, and they hadn't to take that off. That had to remain on. So when it came to, we had our teas, and a Methodist church loaned us their premises and their schoolroom. We had our teas, and when it came to going home time at 7 o'clock, marching all the children to the railway station, and if we saw any youngsters who, were walking about and they had a bit of red ribbon on them, said, "Come on, you're one of ours." And we had to get them all back home. So that was out.
So I've taken you off track a little bit because we were sort of talking about you going to Sunday school rather than...
Yeah. Well, I went to Sunday school. Miss Dora Ivison was my teacher.
Right.
And Mr. Wellborn was the Sunday school superintendent. But of course, as I got older, then Mr. Strodder was our teenage Bible class teacher, so we joined in that, you see. And then we had the Sunday school, that was at Mason Street, and then we had a Sunday school at the City Temple, I've just explained. And we had quite a few youngsters, and they were getting too old for the Sunday school. So I suggested that I took a barber class, and we called it that photograph that you've got.
Yeah.
That teenage barber class, and that was my Sunday afternoon. So really, I was engaged practically full time. It was Sunday morning service, back again in the afternoon from 3 till 4, and back again at night for the evening service, and an after rally in the church, you know, just for a sing song or choruses and things like that. And then when I was 21, I was promoted because they wanted deacons, and I was asked to join the diaconate, and I did. And then I also, when Mr. Beelby, who was the treasurer, he gave it up because he wasn't well enough to carry on, and that fell to my lot to be the treasurer as well. And so that lasted all that time. And during that time, all the young people, there was quite a nice band of young girls. There was Carrie Croft and May Parker and Doreen Abbey, Grace Pullen and all the rest of it. And I remember Grace coming with her sister, who had been a member of that for a long time. Somehow or another, when she walked in with her sister, somehow or another, I just felt within myself that you know, that was going to be my wife. And we started courting. I wrote her a letter first. I met her leaving work. I wrote her a nice letter. I gave it to her in an envelope. I said, read that when you get home, when you're quiet on your own. Well, she says, I have an idea what it is. So we were married on the 17th of June in the City Temple in Hull, 17th of June 1939, and we carried on, and unfortunately when we first then came, and then she had a stroke, and I lost her in June 1990. So that meant we had 51 married life together, 51 years married life. But we also had 4 years courting, because we started courting in 1935, engaged in 1937, married in 1939.
So how old were you when you got married?
23.
So you were
And
23.
Grace was about 18 months older than myself.
Right. Yeah, we'll come back to now later.
Yeah.
So tell me some of the stories of childhood. I can remember you telling me one about pickled onions.
Oh yeah, that.
So tell me the pickled onion story.
Oh well, that was when my dad had his fish shop. Fish shops, even today, if you're in them, you always see a very large jar of pickled onions. So my dad said, go to your grandma, that was his mother, who had this little shop. Go and get me a jar of pickled onions for the shop, which I did. Mother gave me a carrier, so off I went, and I got to my grandma's and had a cup of tea with her and that. And she says, right, where's your carrier? And she put this big glass jar in the carrier, and off I set, going home. And I had to go over Argyle's, I had to go from where my grand shop was into Lonsborough Street, over Argyle Street Bridge, back onto the Anglesby Road, and then to my dad's shop. And while I was walking down Argyle Street Bridge downwards, all of a sudden there was a crash, and the bottom of the carrier fell through, with the result that this big jar also fell and got broke. And so all the pickled onions went rolling down Argyle Street Bridge. So rather than go home without any, I filled every pocket I could with pickled onions. And when I walked in, my dad said, where's the pickled onion? I said, wait a minute. And I started emptying my pockets. And then I told him what had happened. But my poor old mum, she got the blame. He said, fancy giving a lad a paper carrier to carry a heavy jar like that. It was too heavy. And my Uncle Harry, he had a horse and rully, or cart as we'd call it. He used to come and pick my dad up about 7 o'clock in the morning, take him down to the fish docks, and my dad would buy whatever fish he wanted for the shop. So when he came to my dad's shop on that particular morning, he said to my dad, who was called, although his name was Johnny, he got called Jack for some reason. He said, Jack, he said, I've just come over Argyle Street Bridge. He said, it's littered with pickled onions. So my dad suggested that there's quite a story attached to that, and because he told him, and that was it. Another funny thing was not so much me, but that Stan. Stan was a very small stature. He was the smallest, really, of the family in the children's line. And he had a penny to spend. He'd gone for a loaf of bread, and he couldn't see in the window properly. So I put the loaf of bread on the floor and stood on it so I could see in the window.
And he got in trouble because there was a boot print on the bread.
Yeah,
when he got home.
yeah. It's all right. But as a family, you know, Stan, Fred, Ken and Arlene and myself, I can truly say we never had any really nasty times together. There were little differences of opinions.
Always will be in families,
that's
yeah.
always, but we never got to any argument or fighting or anything like that. We're all good pals, you know. We express our views and still be friends and carry on. So that was good. Yeah.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
let's leave it there for now.
Yeah.